Hello, everyone. I'm Eric D'Souza, and you're joining me today on Crime Writers of Canada's podcast. And we are going to continue our tradition of interviewing the shortlisted Crime Writers of Canada members for the Awards of Excellence. I'm starting the first interview of 2025 with my good friend Jonathan Whitelaw. Hi, Jonathan. How are you?
Hi, everybody. Hi, Eric. I'm very well, thank you. Delighted to be a part of this elite group of finalists for this year's Awards of Excellence. Yeah.
I can't say I have favorites, but I was very excited when I saw your name on the list, Jonathan, and I had to keep it a secret from you for like a month. So
You did a sterling job. You did a sterling job. And, yeah, absolutely. It was like I didn't exist. So there you
I had to do that with several friends, and I think now they've learned that I know,
go.
so I have
Yes,
to just
yes.
pretend. So you are nominated for the Who Done It Award for Best Traditional Mystery, sponsored by Jane Doe, with a prize of $500. Uh, the book that you're nominated for is The Concert Hall Killer by Harper North, HarperCollins Canada.
Yeah.
And just in case people don't know who you are, I have a short little bio. After working on the front line of Scottish politics, he moved into journalism, covering everything from sports to music to radioactive waste, and everything in between. He's a regular reviewer, podcaster, panelist, commentator, and in the very near future, an official Calgarian. He is the author of the Bingo Hall Detective series, the Parker Sisters Mysteries, and if that's not enough, he moonlights as Max Nightingale and wrote Murder in Tinseltown, a choose your own adventure mystery story. And you know I'm going to have to ask you questions about that one.
Naturally.
Um, if you're a regular fan of the show, you'll know that I've already talked to Jonathan about the Concert Hall Killers, and you can find it on the July 17th, 2024 podcast. We're still going to talk a little bit about that. But also, you've got some new work out, so let's talk about that too. And we'll try to squeeze everything in. If you don't mind, this is a little bit of a test, Jonathan. I didn't tell you it was coming.
Oh no. Oh no, I was dreadful at tests. As my school
Well,
reports, as a
uh-oh.
decade and a half worth of school reports will attest.
Well, I'm sure you'll pass fine. I find sometimes when I talk to authors about awards that they've been nominated for, when they're extremely, extremely prolific, like you are, they sometimes forget about the details of the novel they're nominated for. So, can you tell us a little bit about The Concert Hall Killer?
Certainly, yes. Do you know that reminds me of the great Scottish crime writer Christopher Brookmyre, who's a lot more prolific than I am, and I remember hearing an interview with him once where he said that like he still gets people that come up and ask him about like his first and second books, but he wrote them like 30 years ago and he's not read them since. But of course, the wonderful thing about books and crime books is that they're ageless, so you can go and pick up that book tomorrow at a Coles or Indigo or what have you, and it all be fresh in your memory as the reader, but not necessarily the writers. Thankfully, though, thankfully the Concert Hall Killer didn't come out 30 years ago, and my sieve-like memory has just about clung on by its fingernails to know what the plot was, or plot is, sorry. So it's the third in the Bingo Hall Detective series, which followed the sort of misadventures of a mother-in-law and son-in-law amateur detective duo, Jason and Amata, who are in the Lake District part of the UK, which is sort of northwestern part of England. And so it's murder, mayhem, mischief, you name it, across the series. The third one sees a TV show, TV production company roll into Penrith, which is the real life town that they live in, and the rather awful director winds up dead. And of course, it's up to our local sleuths, Jason Abbott, to try and track down the killer, the eponymous concert hall killer. So there you go.
Well done. At the beginning, I thought you were stalling, but but
Yes.
well done.
We'll say nothing more about that, shall we?
Um, I find as series of amateur detectives go, they have to grow as amateur detectives.
Yeah.
And sort of like the first one, they stumble into it. And
Yes.
by 4 or 5, they start to be like, well, if we don't solve it, nobody else is going to solve
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Do Jason and Amita start to feel that way now?
I
It's,
don't know if they start to feel that way, but I know I do. It's one of those things that whenever I sit down to start a new bingo book, I have to get the motivation for those two right. And I think any and every cozy writer who writes a series has to get that right from the off because Exactly as you say, Eric. The first one, it's out of the ordinary, right? I always say this about cozy mystery. Cozy mystery is the wonderful oxymoron. It's completely rooted in the humdrum of real life, but it's also total high fantasy. And like when I'm doing teaching and things like that, and I talk about cozy crime, I always say, like, I don't know about, your amateur detectives are us, right? We are the amateur detectives. We can be the amateur detectives, but I don't know about anyone else. But if I opened up my front door and there was a body there with a knife sticking out its chest, the last thing I'd want to do is go and catch the person who put that body there, and more importantly, put the knife there, right? I'd dial 911. But of course, that's the total opposite of what amateur detectives do in cozy crime. So the first time that happens, you can come up with your motivation fairly easily, but the second time, it's it's exactly that. It's like, why are they doing it again? Why are they putting themselves at risk again? Third time, why are they doing it a third time, right? And fourth time, and so on and so forth. So it's something that I'm always at pains at when I sit down to start writing a new one, is that, I have fairly lengthy conversations with my editor about these types of things, that it's got to be right. We've got to have it. We've got to have it nailed down as to why this is happening again, and these characters are going after yet another murderer, yet another killer, and putting themselves at risk. Right? That's the thing. So it's vitally important, I think, for me as a writer to get that down, and hopefully, I hope that every time we sit down and do it for the Bingo Books, it's believable, right? And the thing about crime fiction, mystery fiction, we always kind of sort of leave our believability hanging at the door when we start reading it. That's a great thing about it being fiction, especially so with cozy crime. But you don't ever want to push that. You don't ever want to take a liberty from that part, being the writer. So it's really really important for me to get it down, and hopefully I do.
I,
Hopefully.
I think you do a great job with it,
Oh,
but
thank you. That's what I was fishing for. Thank you.
good fishing. At the same time, the opposite is also true because as the series grows, I'm sorry, I hope you get this reference, but Cabot Cove. At one point,
Yeah.
Murder She Wrote,
Yeah,
it's like,
yeah,
why does anybody live in Cabot Cove and how is
absolutely,
anybody still alive?
absolutely.
Do you feel like you're going to get to that point or?
Yeah, yes and no, right? Yeah, yes and no. I think we're 4 books in, so like, well, the fourth one is out in the UK. It's not out here in Canada till August, and it's slowly grown. I think it's naturally grown from out with, in the first book it's Penrith and Ullswater, which is one of the lakes, and now we're sort of gradually getting across the entirety of Cumbria, which is a big, big area in the UK. I think Amata ventures to Manchester, which is the nearest kind of big, big city, which is 100 miles down the road or what have you. Maybe not as far as that, but yeah. So I think naturally, like there's a kind of claustrophobia as well, right? And you never ever want to kind of stray too far from it. It's a bit like the relationship between Jason and Amata. In the first book, it's very, very, they rub each other up the wrong way. And that at the core of these books is that relationship between the mother-in-law and the son-in-law. And I think they've grown a lot closer across the books. But you always want to keep that little spark there, because for me, as the writer, that's what drives the investigation forward. That's what drives the story forward, is that these two are very, very different people, different generations, different attitudes. They bring their own baggage to the investigation. And you don't want them to be too chummy, even though over the course of 3, 4 books, they've grown a lot closer to each other. But you still want to retain that spark of individuality between the two of them, and that conflict, right? Conflict. That's what writing's all about, especially crime and mystery fiction. It's all about conflict.
Um, I think your fourth book's out, The Garden Club Murders.
It's out in the UK. Yeah, it's
Oh, it's
it's
out here.
I think his official launch is August 12th. I
Oh,
think the
okay.
paperback's out August 12th. Yeah,
Okay. I'm listening to it.
yeah. Oh,
I'm
audio,
listening
of
to
course,
I'm
it's on
listening to the
Audible. Yeah,
audio
yeah, yeah,
right now.
yeah.
You've had the same narrator who's fantastic.
Yeah.
Sid
Sid
does
Cigar. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
fantastic job. Um, I'm listening to it now, and you're right. The relationship has definitely changed. I'm finding them quite chummy, even. Like I find that
Yeah,
when
yeah,
they more or less rib each other like brothers and sisters now,
yeah.
more as
Pretty
opposed
much.
to
Yeah,
before he didn't really want to be around her too
yeah.
much.
Absolutely.
Um,
But listen, that's the challenge, right? That's the challenge, is that you want, they age in real time, the characters, and in my books, and that's not always the case. Certainly not in mystery fiction, but they've aged and they've grown up, and and they are different. I think the way that they investigate things is different in the Concert Hall Killer compared to the Bingo Hall Detectives, or indeed the Garden Club murders to the Concert Hall Killer. I think the way that they go about the investigations, and they're very different, very different crimes to be solved. But that's it, right? That's the challenge of the writer. That's the challenge of every mystery writer is to, especially in a series, because you don't want to have the same book four times, right? Nobody wants that.
Yes, exactly.
And we're all readers, we're all readers first and foremost, and you owe it not only to your readers and your readership, but you owe it to yourself as a writer to kind of challenge yourself every time that you start something new. It's easier said than done, right? It's a lot easier said than done. Yeah, I'll climb down from my ivory tower now.
No, because I was just going to give you another compliment.
Oh, thank you.
Having starting to read the Garden Club, uh, I thought the premise was very unique about
Thank
Anita
you.
getting the cell phone. So, toot your own horn. Could you tell us a bit about how you like how she got the cell phone and how
Yeah,
it led to a mystery?
yeah. So, do you know, weirdly, it kind of came about when we first moved over to Canada, right? So I did a little bit of research into it, and I think cell phones and mobile phone numbers are recycled a lot quicker this side of the Atlantic than they are in the UK. I don't know why. I don't know the science behind that and the reason behind it, but that appears to be the case. So, like, for the first 6 months of me getting my new phone over here in Canada, my new number, my first new number in like 20 years, I was getting all these text messages for like multiple people saying, your appointment is due, or and my wife was getting exactly the same thing. And like that never ever happened in the UK. I didn't know anybody that used to get that in the UK. People that were, renewing their numbers every 2, 3 years. It just never ever happened. And I thought to myself, the spark of the idea came about where I thought, well, what happens if a number gets recycled? And of course, it would have to be amateur who gets the recycled number. It couldn't be anyone else, right? Anyone else wouldn't be bothered by it. But what would happen if they got like some sort of duplicitous or ambiguous message that implied that someone was in a bit of trouble, in a bit of bother? And knowing our sort of sleuths the way that they are, especially amateur, who has their nose in everybody's business, the what would happen if we explored that and went down the route that we did, and that's kind of where it started, and it was a lot of fun actually, because it's a lot of people, a lot of the kind of reviews and things like that in the UK that I've gotten from it say that it's very different in the sense that it's still a murder mystery, but without too many spoilers, that the body's not present in the first 5 chapters, like like the other ones, and like a lot of other conventional murder mysteries, certainly Cozy. Um, but it's still a murder mystery, and there's still a killer to be caught or killers to be caught. I'm not giving away any spoilers, but it was really fun. It was really fun to do because it was very different, and the way that I'm gonna James Bond geek out here for a second. But the way that I've described it, and I described it to my editor this way, was that Roger Moore, his James Bond movies are famous for their gadgetry and their quips and casual sexism. But For Your Eyes Only, which I think was 1980, was like his serious Bond, and it's really good. It's probably his best, or one of his best, and that's kind of how this felt. Like, it's not that it's my serious crime novel, but it's the tone's just a little bit different. And the way into the mystery is a little bit different as well. And I was really lucky, really lucky that I was allowed to do it. My editor very easily could have said, Jonathan, let's move the body fine to the first 5 chapters, like everybody, is expecting, like I was expecting that type of stuff. But she didn't. She 100% backed it, and we knocked it out.
Yeah, I would say it reads different too,
Yeah.
as an observer. I would say the tension's a little up, a little
Yes.
higher tension than your typical ones. And I'm enjoying it, so
Good.
great
I'm
job.
glad. I'm glad.
I hope you don't mind if we pivot just slightly.
No, pivot
But another
away.
another project of yours. It's a two-part question. Why did you choose to write a Choose Your Own Adventure? And maybe more importantly, what did your publisher or agent say when you pitched them that you wanted to write a Choose
Well,
Your Own
this is a
Adventure?
family show. I can't repeat what they said. Yeah, I can't repeat what they tell me on a regular basis. It's a family show.
Paraphrase.
Wait till 9 o'clock watershed. So I was a massive fan of these books growing up, right? And I always longed for them. they sort of got overtaken. So I'm showing my age that I grew up reading these in the kind of 1990s where there was lots of them until a point where they just sort of fell off a cliff. Because I think video games in particular and home video and other forms of entertainment sort of took over, or interactive entertainment took over. But any holiday, any school trip, my backpack was full of these books because they were all really really thin and really really quick. And I loved going down the corridor, turn to page 72 if you wanted to take the door on the left, turn to page 55 if you want to carry on straight. And I never got it right. I was always clubbed to death by an ogre or fell off a bridge, or I never ever got it right. And then of course there was licensed ones. There was there was Ninja Turtles ones and Super Mario and stuff like that. So it was endless. And then like I said, it sort of time moved on, and technology moved on and stuff. So I'd always wanted to do one, and my wife had mooted the idea years and years and years ago. And it wasn't until I was speaking to a very dear friend of mine, Anthony Johnson, who's a wonderful writer. Well, the idea sort of kind of came back because he'd been kicking about the idea of doing something like this. This was way back in, I think, 2023. And yeah, I'd always wanted to do something like this, and I kind of spoke to my agent, and she very very supportive, obviously, as she always is, and she moved me over to my non-fiction agent, because this technically comes under non-fiction. God knows why. I think because it's a game book, a puzzle book. And yeah, I mean, we talked about it. He said, how would you want to do it? Would you want it to be a bingo hall detectives version? Would you do something new? Um, and I'd always wanted to to have a novel set in that sort of golden era of Hollywood, sort of L.A. Confidential, that 1950s glamour when the movies were well, movies are still a big thing, but a huge big event. And because I love all the cinema from then, and I love the style and I love the look of it and stuff like that. And I thought, well, do you know what, this could be the opportunity to do it, because one, I've always wanted to do something like this. Two, you eliminate the technology element of it when when you turn the clock back to 1958. You don't have cell phones, you don't have GPS tracking, you don't have CSI and all the rest of it. Or you don't have it quite as refined as it is now. And I thought, from a mechanical point of view of telling this type of story, where you, the reader, are the detective, it might make it easier to make these types of decisions, when you don't have the easy out of, well, just check your phone or just check CCTV footage, or what have you. So it all really came together really really quickly, and Harper North, HarperCollins, they loved the idea of it. They thought it sounded really really good, and yeah, that's pretty much what I did last summer. If I want to paraphrase the movies, if I want to stick with the cinema references, that's kind of what I did last summer, and it was eye opening, shall we say? It was eye opening.
Well, let's end on this. I believe it's about 2 years you've been in Canada now. That's about
Three in
right.
May, three
Three
this
in
May.
May.
Yeah,
All right,
yeah.
congratulations.
Thank you.
Does it feel like home? And is it
Oh
time to
yes.
update your bio to say
Oh
that
yes.
Jonathan Whitelaw is a Canadian award-winning author?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's felt like home. It's felt like home since we got off the plane, right? We've been made to feel so, so welcome. In Canada, in Alberta, yeah, and Crime Writers of Canada, it has got, and I'm not just saying this because I'm on the show and I'm on the podcast and all the rest of it, and I'm nominated. But the Crime Writers of Canada have gone a very, very long way to making me feel part of a community and be part of the community that is the Canadian crime writing scene. And oh yeah, this is home, right? When I go back to the UK or I go elsewhere for book stuff, I always say, "Oh, that's me going home," when I'm flying back to Alberta. So it doesn't. I don't even think twice about it, right?
That is great to hear. Well, I'm going to wish you the best of luck.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for taking time to
Pleasure.
not be writing and talking to us. Thanks, Jonathan.
Thank you so much. Thank you.